Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SavvyCast. This is Jamie, and I'm thrilled that you're joining us today. To all of you watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast, thank you for being here. Today, my guest is an avid baker, and she is also a two-time cookbook author and TV cookie competition judge for Hallmark. She has a new series called The Sweet Life with Emily, which is premiering on the GAC community app. She is an avid home baker, the mother of 3 and 1 angel, and her beautiful story from the loss of her daughter to triumph in the kitchen will leave you full of hope. Her smile is hard-won and her joy is real. Emily and her husband, Mike, and their children live in a small town north of Seattle, Washington, called Arlington. She has built a brand around joy, hope, and delicious desserts that taste as good as they look. So today, I am thrilled to welcome to the SavvyCast, Emily Hutchinson. Emily, welcome to the SavvyCast.
I'm so happy to be here, Jamie. Thank you for having me.
Well, Emily, I am thrilled to finally meet you. And in my introduction, I shared that you are the Sweet Life with Emily on the GAC app. And I am Southern Savvy on the GAC app. So I've been watching everyone else, and my goodness, you are fabulous in the kitchen.
Thank you. I've been watching yours too. I got to make that corn dip. I'm like, holy moly.
Oh my goodness. Well, I love following you on Instagram, and I do have to laugh at something that you put, I think it was on a story about butter boards.
Yes.
And in fact, you'll see it, one of my best friends, and it will be coming out soon. I went to her house because we're doing a renovation. Marie Marino went to her beautiful home, and we did a cheese board. And later we were talking about the butter board, and she says, I do not fathom how people are smearing butter over some of these wooden boards. And then I saw you later talking about what the heck.
Well, I'm like, I have questions. Is the board new? Are we using a board that we've put meat on? Because the butter soaks up the flavors.
Yeah.
So I'm always, whenever I see those boards, I'm like, okay, I have some questions and then I'll eat it.
We all have some questions. So anyway, but Emily, the first thing I want to ask you is my icebreaker question. What would you choose as your last meal?
Oh, okay. Deep dish Chicago style pizza. I am like, I have chills thinking about it. I know you probably think, oh, steak and lobster, right? Which I love, but pizza, I just love pizza. And authentic Chicago style deep dish pizza is money. And that's what I would want to eat for my last meal.
Where did you fall in love with that, the authentic Chicago style?
Right. So my husband and I were on my first book tour, and we stopped in Chicago, and we had we tried a couple different places. And I mean, just like this one place we went to, the crust had like this crispiness to it because it was buttery, and it was like just insane. So, I mean, and then the sauce and the cheese, like the cheese. And
oh goodness. Well, you don't look like you eat a lot of pizza, but
you know what? I work out a lot. I do indulge, but it takes a lot of discipline to like eat really well to be able to have those treats and stuff. And I just got back from a workout class, Jamie. So I really am dedicated to my health, but I do indulge in desserts and you know, pizza.
Yes. Well, tell us about before we get into your family, tell us about your cookbooks. And I want to link to everything that we're talking about into show notes, and I'll also link to your cookbooks.
Oh, you're amazing. So my first cookie cookbook is called Creative Cookie Decorating. And it's really the first guide to decorating cookies with buttercream frosting. And there's different recipes in there. But I have the thing that I do is I do step-by-step photos with my hand in the photo. So it's not like you're seeing step by step with like each finished like process of it. You're seeing how I actually pipe in photos. So that has helped so many people learn how to decorate. And it was just such a huge hit when the first book came out, and I got to share my story in it. We'll talk about that soon. But and then I sprinkled scripture in some of the pages. So it's really like a piece of me. And then everybody loved the book so much. I mean, it was crazy. I sold so many books. And so my publisher was like, we want another book. So we did a sequel to that, which came out last October, and it's called Creative Cookie Decorating for Everyone. And the everyone means actually everyone, because I have dairy-free recipes in there. I have gluten-free recipes. I have sugar-free cookie recipes. And then I also introduce cookie cakes in this one. So if you're nervous about, decorating on a small cookie, or you have kids and it's easier just to bake one cookie cake and then decorate on that, there's so many options in there. So it really is for everyone.
Okay, I'm going to need to get that one. I would be more the cookie cake, but in fact, Great American Cookie is one of my favorite things. I don't know. Do y'all have one of the? Do y'all have those? They're like they're a thing in the South. I mean, everything is piped beautifully, and they're just yummy. I think it's a Southern thing. Which you live in Washington State, correct?
I do live in Washington State. Yes, I live about 45, 50 minutes north of Seattle in a country town called Arlington. It's where I grew up.
Oh, so
my family grew up. My grandparents grew up. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, tell us about your family.
Okay, so I'll kind of finish my story about where I grew up in Arlington.
Yes.
But it's funny because my daughter had the same English teacher that my sisters have. But I actually grew up in Oso, which is east of Arlington. I don't know if you ever have heard of Oso. It made national news years ago because there was a deadly mudslide, the deadliest mudslide in American history.
Yes.
Happened in Oso. It was Oso mudslide. So it was, in our backyard. My grandparents were still living up there at the time. And so
were they affected by it?
Thankfully, no, but we couldn't get a hold of my pop all day. And he was, on a road trip, but we were like, Pop, you have to answer the phone.
So what was because we are totally not familiar with mudslides here in the South. What range or geographic, is it a mile is affected, or how widespread is the damage of a mudslide?
I mean, it was massive. I want to say maybe a mile. I don't know, but it took out so many homes and so much land and stuff. And, I spent my whole life, driving around in the area. And so when I drive now, it's just so strange because everything has changed because the mud washed away everything. And, people lost their lives and lost everything. And so it's just a terrible tragedy, but it's such an incredible community. So I was fortunate to grow up in a really little community, really. And my mom owned the Oso store growing up. So we lived right across from the Oso store. We were just little, wild kids. I have 3 sisters. And so we call ourselves free range children because my mom worked and my parents got divorced. So my mom was raising 4 girls. So we had a really good childhood. And then I have 3 children of my own and then 1 angel. And my oldest is 21, almost 21. She'll be 21. Goodness. I know. I had her when I was young. I actually, crazy story. This is a whole nother story, Jamie. I have a lot of layers.
Hey, we all do.
I actually found out I was pregnant and that I got accepted to the University of Washington in the same week. So it was at the end of my senior year. It was just this, it was one of those things that I made the decision and I was like, this is what we're doing. And she is just the most incredible human. She is on the dean's list every quarter at Eastern Washington University. And she's just a light to the world. She's just amazing. And then my middle son, Nick, is 17. And then my youngest, Mikey, is 13. So.
Oh my goodness. So you're not quite to an empty nest yet. I mean, you've got a while
Yes, Mikey's 13. So we got, I mean, what is it? 13, 40, 50, 60, 70, 5 years. I should have been able to do the math quicker in my head.
Oh
But I
my,
mean, that's going to go by quicker than I even
yeah.
think, right?
Yeah, it will. It will. We're empty nesters. And it seems like yesterday I was in carpool. So it just, you wake up one morning and everyone's they're out of the house. But
I know.
but it sounds like you still have at least your oldest nearby.
Right. But you know how it is when they drive and they're working, they're really
Yeah.
not home. So
Yeah.
it starts to get quiet in a really busy, loud, loving home. When
Yeah.
it starts to get quiet, it's definitely a different season.
Yeah. Well, so what does your husband do?
He actually owns a used car lot in Everett, which is about 20 minutes from where we live. It's called Broadway Auto Sales, and
Awesome.
he is an honest car guy. It's like
Oh,
one of
good.
the few. One
Yeah.
of the few. They're closed on Sundays. They love the Lord. Him and his
Oh,
business partner.
yeah.
It's just amazing. So, and he really helps people. I mean, he's given people cars, people that have been down and out. He's just
Yeah.
an incredible human.
That is wonderful. Well, I want to hear about your family and we're going to lead into your story. But first of all, I want to ask, why cookies? Well, where did because there's so many things you could be passionate about. Are cookies special for a certain reason, a sentimental reason?
There's actually, crazy enough, no sentimental reason. I learned to bake when I was 5 with my grandma.
Oh, wow.
I know. And you think, you just kind of like rolling dough and helping out. I was baking breads and pies, Jamie. Like I was like, I caught
wow.
on so fast.
Yeah.
And we baked cookies, we baked all sorts of stuff, but when I grew up, I started baking again. It was just something to have a canvas to get out what was in my head. I started piping flowers, and the videos started going viral, and people love to learn. And so that's where the cookies, and also I am a cookie monster.
Oh my goodness.
love cookies.
So, and a cookie is probably, other than a cake, one of the easiest blank canvases for you to be creative with buttercream. Now, I have to ask, because I have a funny story. I applied for a cake decorating job. This is how crazy I am. In early marriage, just because it was available and I thought it would be fun, and I had zero experience. And they asked me to pipe a rose, which of course I could not do. And I know they thought, it's this girl. I didn't get the job. But that leads me to ask, where did you learn? Because to some of us, it doesn't come naturally at all.
You know what?
The piping. I know your grandmother taught you to
Yes.
bake, but did she teach you the piping?
No, but you know what? Interestingly enough, my grandma was actually a really talented artist. Let me see if I can move this up so you can see that painting back there. If you can kind of see that. Oh, shoot, you can't really see that. But she was an incredible artist. Okay. And so I have the art gene anyways.
Oh, yeah.
But I cannot explain it. It's a God-given talent. And another talent of mine is being able to teach people how to do it. So one of my friends, I think it's funny that you said that you cannot pipe a rose, because one of my friends, she took one of my classes one time, and she could not, she's like, I am the most uncraftiest, unartiest person ever. I can't do this. And I was like, Megan, trust me. And she ended up decorating the most beautiful cookies in the class.
In one lesson?
Yes.
Oh
yes.
my goodness.
Sometimes you just need the right teacher to show you exactly what to do, exactly how to hold your hand. So it just really is. I believe that I can teach the majority of people how to decorate.
So if anyone watching or listening says, hey, I want to learn from Emily. I know you said you had was it YouTube, viral YouTubes? Where would they go to see some of what you have out there on video?
I have all the platforms. I have Facebook, I have Instagram, I have YouTube. So anyone can find me at the Hutch Oven. I do classes with Williams Sonoma online as well. So that is another really good opportunity where I do classes and show people how to decorate and how to make my cookies and stuff. So there are opportunities. And then the books are such a good learning tool.
That is amazing. And if you're doing that for Williams Sonoma, that's wonderful. That's fabulous. Okay, so Emily, tell us, you have a very inspiring and heartbreaking but beautiful story, and you're very open about it, and you're very transparent. Can you just share with us some of what you've been through and how it has affected who you are today and what you're doing now?
Yes, I do love sharing this story. I love offering people hope. I had already kind of touched on. I'm just going to broadly. I'm going to tell
Mhm,
you it all, Jamie.
mhm,
So, I had already mentioned that I learned to bake with my grandma when I was
mhm.
5. And so she already planted those seeds of baking, and I was doing it so much, and my family was like, oh, what's Emily bringing for Thanksgiving and Christmas, because I was baking so much. And then my grandma actually lost her battle from cancer in 2000 when I was 12. So a long time
Mhm,
ago. And so
mhm,
baking kind of took a temporary back burner. And
mhm,
then I grew into adulthood. And then I had Nick and Reese, my 2 older ones that I had mentioned before,
mhm,
in a relationship that ended up not working out. And then I met my now husband, Mike. And
mhm.
so we met and we fell in love, and we were like, okay, we're going to solidify our family and have a child of our own. And so our daughter Jenny was born, and her birthday is on Halloween, actually. So she's our little
Oh,
pumpkin. So
wow.
every time the pumpkins come out, it opens up a lot of feelings.
Mhm.
And then so, I mean, she was just the most perfect like, I mean, I would always say, this, like, babies aren't normally like this. They cry and
Mhm,
like, she was just a really easy baby. And
mhm.
January 15th of 2008, she passed away. And
And she was 2.5 months old?
she was 2.5 months old. I went in to wake her up like every other morning early. Sometimes she woke up before, but my daughter Reese was 5 at the time, I believe. We went in to wake her up, and I immediately knew something was wrong. And I scooped her up, and I just started screaming for Mike. And I was like, call 911, Jenny's not breathing. And ran to the kitchen counter and brushed everything off. It was like the movies. And I immediately started doing chest compressions, because they teach you that, which is
Mhm.
wonderful that they teach you that after you have a baby now. And I was giving her chest compressions, and Mike was on the phone with 911, and we were switching on and off. And I could, out of the corner of my eye, I could see my 2 children, Nick and Reese, kind of peering around the corner. And I was like, go back to your room. And they were bawling, and it was just
Oh my goodness.
awful. And I remember a moment where I was bargaining with God. I was like, I will do anything.
Mhm,
Don't let her
mhm,
die. Do not let her die. God, I will serve you for the rest of my life
mhm.
if you don't let her die. And
Right.
Jamie, in that moment, I had breathed air into her lungs, and I was pressing the air out, and I heard it from her. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's breathing. And I looked over at my husband, Mike, and he was crying, and he was just shaking his head. And I was like, why are you crying? She's breathing. And then I realized that it was my own air I was pushing out, and the despair started to sink in. And I was like, this is not happening. How could this happen to us? This is not happening. And the black SUVs pulled up and took photos of everything, because people really do hurt their children. So the detectives were in there. It was so crazy. They scooped up all of her bedding, and like treated us like, not that we were criminals, but like they were doing a job, and I was like, my daughter just died. But
Okay, I'm surprised that I guess they don't look at what a family maybe looks like, or how I mean, I would never suspect you, or so, but you're saying that is standard protocol
yeah,
for them to
because
swoop in if a child has
yeah,
died?
yeah, because they don't know this. I did leave out the part where the
The
paramedics came in,
ambulance.
the ambulance came in, they were working on her outside. The chaplain came in, and one of the firefighters had mentioned that he's seen babies die, like just die like in someone's arms. Just there's no reason. That's why they call it SIDS. So they were wonderful and very caring. And, they had actually checked on us, after a few
Mhm.
months, but the detectives were doing a job, and
Wow.
they just were very ice cold and took all of her stuff. And this was actually really terrible. They dropped off all her bedding and everything in a black garbage bag on her front porch like 2 weeks later. and they do
Oh
a
my
full
goodness.
autopsy. I mean, she didn't even have Tylenol in her system. They just said there was no reason. And so that left me so upset and angry and confused. And I mean,
Can't imagine.
beyond broken, beyond the worst, living the worst nightmare ever. But I still had two other kids that I had to carry on for, right? And
Right.
so I was kind of going through the motions of life. And when it sunk in that Jenny died, I was like, I have to get pregnant right away. My brain was not thinking right. And I was like, I need a baby. I need my baby back. And we actually got pregnant with Mikey 3 months after Jenny passed away. So Mikey was born exactly a year and 10 days after Jenny died. And
Oh my
Jamie, we
goodness.
weren't planning on having any more kids after we had Jenny. And
Wow.
so you know, it, with everything that happened, I would not have had Mikey. We weren't going to have any more kids, you know?
Mhm.
And so,
Was Mike on board as well? He wanted to have one right away.
yes. And you know what? It's so funny. He would have another one if I wanted to have another one right now.
Oh,
He
really? Yeah.
loves babies. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, the ship has sailed for that.
The ship has sailed. I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, just because Mikey's 13 now and there's such a
yeah.
big gap, I feel like.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know,
So when that happened, I just have to ask how much healing took place once Mikey was born, or even when you were pregnant. Did you feel like some of the pain was gradually? I know it's always there and it comes and
right.
goes, but did it help like you thought it would to
Well,
deal with the grief?
I think in a way it did, but you know what? The strange thing is that with all the good stuff happening, there was still like such a hole in my heart. And I just felt like I was living, but I wasn't alive. There
Mhm.
was something. I mean, even before I lost Jenny, there was something my whole life that I was missing. And it just really amplified and magnified that there was like I was just hurting so bad. And
Mhm.
actually friends of ours noticed how bad that we were struggling and they invited us to church. And we went to church and at the
Were
Grove.
either of you at all familiar with church? Did you have any experience growing up in church?
Yeah, actually, I would have called myself a Christian before. I prayed to God, and I
Mhm.
didn't follow Jesus like I do now. It's a
Mhm.
very different relationship. But I went to church on Easter and Christmas,
Mhm.
and in the summer we went to Bible camp and stuff growing
Yeah.
up, and so I had a very little but weak foundation.
Mm.
But it wasn't like it is today. And Mike actually grew up being an altar boy. So he
Oh.
was very, his family was involved in the Catholic Church. And my grandma was involved in the Catholic Church too. And so we had gone to the Catholic Church sometimes on Easter and stuff like that. So I knew, some of the stories, I knew some of the Bible stories, but it wasn't until that day in church when God met Mike and I. And it was like, whatever Pastor Nick said that day, like it just met us where we were at. And I this is a part that I left out. I was drinking, Jamie. I was drinking alcohol to kind of
Mhm.
mask my pain. Mike was drinking too. And
Mhm.
that day in church, it just was like God was just like, we're not doing this anymore. And it
Mm.
was like I can only explain it as a real true miracle. And he just pulled us up out of the pit, and we got involved in the church and we started giving back to the community, and we started like seeing a purpose for our life and for our pain. And this is, brings me to what I do now with the Hutch oven. So I actually, after I was going to church and stuff, I decided to get back in the kitchen and start baking. And
How long were you out? Because I know that period of grief, you weren't cooking, you were
Mhm.
drinking, and you weren't in church. How long was that period of time?
Maybe a couple years.
So
It's
y'all were in the pit.
for the pit for a
Figuratively.
couple years. And you know what? I hit
Wow.
it really well. And people would always say, you are so strong. And I'm like, you have no idea. I hit it really well. I was involved in everything my kids were doing in school and their projects and, being a wonderful mother. But it was like a secret thing that I, was doing. And so
Did you and Mike, because so many people who lose a child, it affects their marriage. Did y'all have any issues?
no, and that is
Oh,
another
wow.
miracle in itself, Jamie, is we actually, because we weren't married before. And when we started going to church, we ended up getting married and baptized together, but we never
Oh,
once blamed each other. And that is statistically, with the
mhm.
loss of a child, there's a divorce
That's right.
or a
Mhm.
separation. And so we clung to each other,
Wow.
and we were like, there was no one to blame. And we were both in so much pain. So we just leaned on each other, and we did struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
And, I guess if you don't really have a strong foundation with, the Lord,
Mhm.
and you go through something tragic like that, you don't really know how to handle your pain or handle
Right.
your grief
Right.
or
Mhm.
handle anything really.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, yeah, so it was very difficult for me, very difficult.
So when y'all were invited to church,
Mhm.
was it the first day or did you go? Was it the first Sunday or did it take a little while for y'all to just have that revelation of, oh my goodness?
It was the first Sunday.
Oh my
Mhm.
goodness.
I'm
Wow.
telling you, it
Wow.
a miracle, right? It
That's
was
amazing.
like, yeah, and it was like, no, you know what? We're not no drinking. We're not doing this. We're giving back to the community. We're enriching our children's lives. We're not doing this. And so we just developed this relationship with the Lord, and it
When did
completely
y'all get
changed our whole life.
baptized and married?
Ah, I don't know that
Roughly.
I don't I maybe a couple years. I don't know. Because
Wow.
Mike and I, before we got married, actually, we've been together for 17 years now, but before we got married, we were like, it's just a piece of paper. Why do we need to get married? And
Hmm.
then you become a Christian and you see how big of a different, like how huge a marriage is. And
Yeah.
so it really, when we got married, it just changed on a totally different level. And so I maybe a couple years, maybe a couple years. It's been, it's been 12 years since we started going to church.
Mhm.
So
So the
I would have to
people,
write out a timeline. You're with these dates. I should have wrote down a
oh,
timeline.
no, no,
So
no. I was just trying to get a picture. So the people, your friends who were very well versed in the church and rooted, they gave you all time to come to the conclusion that you wanted to get married and baptized. You weren't pressured or pushed.
no, not at all.
Wow.
We
That sounds like a great fellowship, a great family of God, that
Yes,
they just
amazing.
loved you until you came to that place.
Yes, yes. And everything that we have done and the choices that we've made in following God, they've of course supported, but it's been 100% our choice. And no one has ever shamed us or looked at us, like, it's just amazing church.
Because your story is like that of so many others. We all have something, but we can minister to others in that area, which leads me to ask you, have you ever found anyone who has gone through something similar, whether it's the loss of a child or that you've been able to really minister to?
A lot of people actually. So when I got back in the kitchen and I started baking again, and like we had talked about, I created the cookie videos that were going viral.
Hmm.
I wanted to my platform was growing, and
Hmm.
I was like, Lord, I need to be able to share and inspire people on a bigger level. Help me do that. And so
Hmm.
I started my blog, and I wrote my story down in my blog. And I remember running this by my sister. My sister is also in the public eye. She's a news correspondent, so she's
Hmm.
always got eyes on her. And so I read my story to her. And after she read it, she was like, are you sure you want to go full Jesus? And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, well, your story is beautiful, but you're really talking about Jesus a lot. And there are Christian bands that don't specifically say Jesus in their lyrics, but that's what they're doing. And I was like, oh, absolutely. I'm going full Jesus because that's my story.
Hmm.
There's no
Wow.
other way. There's no
Yeah.
other way to tell it. I have to.
Yeah.
And no one can refute your story.
Right.
And she was like, I 100% support you. And so I published it, and I had so many women reach out to me, and they were like, I love following you on social media, but I had no idea. And I went through this, and your story helped me. Or I had one girl read my story and say, I had lost my child, and I packed my kids up and I drove down to the church like that next Sunday after I read your story.
Oh, wow.
And so you just don't even understand how many people you can reach by just sharing your testimony. You don't have to preach anything to anyone. I just share my story, and then I let the Lord do his work, and he does every single time. And I've spoken, but actually this is funny. So I after I shared my story on my blog, I had so much good feedback, but I was like, God, I know you want to use me for a bigger purpose. I'm ready. You show me what you want me to do. And right away, I had this woman reach out to me, and she was from this big women's blogger conference. And she was like, we would love to have you come share your story. And I was like, okay,
oh, wow.
no. I know God wants me to do that, but I'm going to go this way, because that way is too scary. And I don't want to get up in front of a bunch of women and speak because I'm terrified. So I turned them down, and that haunted me, Jamie. And I after that,
because you're so articulate, you don't have it. You look like you would get up in front of anyone.
I can now. But then I was like, I am way too scared to do that. And so I asked for forgiveness, and I was like, God, I know that was a gift from you. And, if you give me something else, I'll do it. So I'm not even kidding you. A week later is when I was in Safeway with Mike at the deli counter, and I opened up my emails. I don't know why I opened up my emails in Safeway, but it was an email from Hallmark's Home and Family. And this was like 5 years ago. And they were like, we want to have you on the show. And I was like, honey, Hallmark wants me to come on the show.
Oh my goodness. How did that come? I know it's a God thing, but did you have any affiliation with Hallmark, or did you? Wow.
What? Laura Pearson, Angel Laura, found me on Instagram, and she was like, check this girl out. We need her on the show. And ever since then, and the first time I went on Home and Family, they let me share my story. And this was before Cameron was even on Home and Family. So, Debbie was so supportive, and we just hit it off right away. And we all just became like actual family over the years of working together there. So I was their regular cookie decorator.
Oh my goodness. And you know what? Laura did share that with me when she was on the podcast. And she's and of course I knew you through GAC, but she's the one who said, you need to have Emily on to share her powerful story. And I can just say, you don't have to have had the loss you had to be impacted by your story. But to those listening who may have had the loss of a child, when you are in the deep, dark place and you think, I'm never going to be happy, I'm never going to have joy, I'm never going to feel normal again, what would you say?
I would say pray a lot, and I would say cling to the Lord. And you know what? The hard truth is it doesn't get better. It doesn't. You just learn how to live with it differently. You really do. Because I am now living with, the fact that one of my children is not on the earth. And it's so strange, Jamie. It's like my stomach and like my body will physically ache for her. It's just like we yearn for our children, right? Mm-hmm. And so when one of them's not on the earth, you have this pain that you carry, but you learn how to carry it differently. And when you can turn your pain into a purpose, it changes everything. And so when you can be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to help someone with my story, or, something like that has really, really been helpful in the healing process. But, you just have to keep going and not give up, because it does get easier. It doesn't get better, but it gets easier, And so I think that's hard. It's kind of hard to, when people, they ask me a lot too, what advice would you give for someone that's trying to help someone that just lost a child?
That was my next question. Mm-hmm.
You know what? There's no real advice. It's really just, what stands out for me is the people that brought me food, is the people that brought me flowers, and the people that just checked and said, hey, I'm checking on you. And my
just
aunt,
the practical. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And don't ever say God's got a plan. Don't ever say that, because you eventually start to see God working yourself. but that's something that you you come to the realization on your own. Anyone saying that is like,
No.
no.
Mm-mm.
But just being there, you don't even have to say anything. I just think that just the acts of service is really helpful when family is grieving, and that's something that they remember. My husband and I still talk about that, the ones that we had this angel on her grave for 10 years, and then it finally just disappeared. I don't know if the groundskeepers took it, but I got to reach out to them and see where it went. But someone brought this beautiful bronze angel and just left it at her funeral, and there was no card, no one said anything, and it was just an anonymous, beautiful gift that we put on her grave, and it was something that I loved. And also planting a tree is very helpful. One of our friends' sons passed away, and we brought them a rose bush. And so every year when you see that rose bush bloom, there's something tangible on the earth that you can pick, or that you can see, or you can smell. So those things have been really healing for myself, and things that I've done for other people as well. And you know what? You don't even have to call people. You just drop it off.
Right.
Just drop it off on their front porch with a note. You don't even need to knock. I remember opening the door to flowers and stuff like that, and it was really like,
Well, and I mean, I think in terms of people needing to eat, but having no desire to cook and really no appetite. So one of the first things that I think of is just simple comfort food that they can stick in the freezer, or that they can put out, and even put out for guests who are going to be coming, especially during the initial loss. So
yes.
have you ever thought about writing a book about your experience, or a devotional, or something in addition to what you do with your cookbooks?
I would love to do that. That is a dream of mine. I would love to do that, to put it, all down in a book and do that. So that is on my list of things that I would really love to do, because I think it would help so many people. And even with the things like, how do you help someone going through grief?
Yes.
Like you asked, things like that, because we don't know what to do. And unless we've lived through it, like if you've lost a parent, then you kind of know how to help someone that's lost a parent. So when we have suffered, we are uniquely qualified to help those that are suffering. So in the way that I have suffered, now I am, qualified to help those. So.
Well, Emily, your story is beautiful, and I do hope that you will share the photo, or people can go to your blog post. So I'll include those links. She was beautiful.
Thank you.
I know your entire family is just precious, and you radiate joy and beauty, and oh my goodness. And everyone, I encourage you to follow every platform that Emily is on, and especially on GAC, the Sweet Life with Emily Hutchinson. And Emily, is because I know you've got carpool, but is there anything you want to say before we end? Anything that you would like for people to know?
I feel like we kind of left this kind of heavy, with my story and everything. And I feel like you never really know what's behind someone's smile, right? Or someone's joy. Right. But I really believe with all of my heart that joy is a choice. And I feel like, we can choose to be upset, or, a victim of what happened, or we can choose to find joy, and we can choose to love people and live life. And I feel like the life that I live now is honoring her in such an incredible way, versus if I was to stay upset and sad and guilty, because I kind of had a weird feeling when I started to find a lot of joy, like, should I be happy about this? Because I am still in a lot of pain, but it's like, I am honoring her in an incredible way by choosing joy and living life and loving on my family and loving on people around me. And so I honor her in that way. And so if there's anyone listening, choosing joy in all things, and we have that power to be able to choose, which is an incredible gift from the Lord, that we get to choose that.
Well, you exemplify that. And I thank you on behalf of everyone watching and listening. Thank you for sharing. And I'm going to put all of the links to you and your social media and your cookbooks, which I'm going to be ordering. And I just appreciate it. And Emily, anytime you want to come back, you have an open door on the SavvyCast. And I hope one day to meet you.
We are going to meet in real life one day and hug.
One day.
I know. I feel like we're good friends already. So thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Emily. And until next time, you have a fabulous day.
You too, my friend.